You are listening to the Innovating Cannabis Podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel. In addition to producing and hosting this podcast, I'm a freelance writer and journalist. You can find links to my work in the show notes along with my contact information. My guest today is Todd Shapiro, CEO of Red Light Holland, a company at the forefront of cultivating and selling legal magic truffles in the Netherlands recreational market. Red Light Holland is taking a multi-pronged approach to advancing psilocybin legalization, both as a therapeutic tool and a recreational product. Todd shares insights into the company's strategy in the Netherlands, their expansion into Canada with mushroom grow kits and functional gummies, and their groundbreaking partnership with Irvine Labs in California, a DEA-registered facility analyzing imported Red Light Holland truffles from the Netherlands. Great conversation. Let's welcome Todd Shapiro. That I think is so great about your company, and what has amazed me is how you're taking a multi-pronged approach to progressing the legalization of psilocybin and psychedelics. Because it's obviously with cannabis and with psychedelics, it's slow moving, trying to get the whole world to, accept it and
yeah, the compliance side of it is like the behind the scenes stuff that it's as management, it's very difficult, right? So we can talk about that too. Like I'm pretty open book. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear about that and challenges. I'm sure it's very similar to the cannabis industry. We're just, having the same issues. But anyway, so let's just start kind of from the beginning and then take it all the way through, like where you started. Well, actually, how would you describe Red Light Holland and its mission?
So Red Light Holland went public about 5 years ago now, and the core mission from the day one, and it's our slogan, is from underground to mainstream, and it's a bit of a play on words, meaning like where legally we're allowed to sell magic truffles, psilocybin recreationally, is in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands. The way to grow them is actually recreating the underground environment. So that underground and mainstream is like, let's take a naturally occurring product and do it with all compliance and all legalities where we're allowed to do it. And then let's try to like move that mission to a standardized product, to a mainstream product that with science and with data and with the backing now of a lot of different research going into psilocybin specifically, that this can be a mainstream solution for mental health, hopefully. And that's always been the core goal. And recently it's evolved a little bit into the company did a little bit of an investment into Bitcoin. And for now it's just into a Bitcoin ETF, and we're working our way through an exchange to start, actually holding physical Bitcoin. And the aligned theme there, which is the evolved core and the mission, is craving mental and financial freedom. So if you think of, deregulation, decentralization, like that combined kind of ethos of personal sovereignty, this is a really big goal for Red Light Holland. And we're there for the people, like people's, adult responsible use with compliance, legalities, information, education. So all of that to us is at the core, very important. So a bit of an evolved mission. But, in a way, it's, just sort of followed that natural trajectory.
So you started in Holland because it's in the Netherlands because it's legal, and you started selling the truffles, which is really psilocybin, right? But it's because it's the underground, the truffle, that makes it legal, not the above ground or something like that. And so, yeah. What is that business model there, and what do they allow?
Great question. So it's not too dissimilar from, and we're sort of a Canadian operating company on the CSE, but also on the OTC. And in Canada, as you know, it's a little bit different than in the States for cannabis. In Canada, we have legally, nationwide, like federally regulated rules around cannabis. And you walk into a dispensary or a cannabis shop and you purchase the stuff. And in the Netherlands, what you're allowed to do there, through again all legal and all compliance, is you're able to sell it through what they call smart shops. We don't love the word smart shop, candidly. We think it's a little bit like, more hooky, kind of like it's just like, smart
Yeah,
shop.
smart
We
shop. Yeah.
Yeah, we like kind of the wellness shop. That's sort of our mentality. And so we like to think of them as wellness shops. And so in the Netherlands, we have a facility there that grows these psilocybin truffles. We then take them to our distribution company called SR Wholesale, and that's it's a really good little business for us. I say little, but it contributes to a lot of our annual revenue. Quite frankly, really well run business, cash flow positive business, and they distribute those to somewhere around 150, 200 plus, depending on the seasonality. There's always POs, and then they filter off for a little bit, and then they come back, and we distribute our truffles. And we've created our own brands. So we have a brand called iMicrodose, and we were the first company ever in the Netherlands to think of selling truffles in using them in that responsible way, and showing you contraindications, setting up telecounseling support if you scan on the QR code, a lot of education information with pamphlets and information on the website, community events, community groups. And we also have another brand called Maca, and that's at worldofmaca.com. And Maca's a little more elaborate, a little more, we are allowed to kind of, market and have fun with labels and things. So like it's kind of an in-your-face, really smartly branded a line of truffles for us. So we have many different varieties there. Atlantis, Muskoka, we've named one. You name it, we have them. Old Dutch. So and those get to a lot of different stores. So that's the model in the Netherlands right now.
And is it just dried mushrooms, or are they chocolates, or do you have different products, or is that not allowed?
This is the issue. You're really not allowed manipulating it from its naturally occurring form. So what you get is think about like a truffle, but a little bit different than like shaved truffles on your delicious Italian pasta. And what you do is you basically strain them, very carefully, and you pull out call it the pieces of that formed on the sclerotia, and you get those actual truffles, and then you immediately, and again, very carefully with like a lot of quality control, vacuum seal them and then package them. So really you're eating the raw truffle, which is like pleasant to eat. It's not, it's a bit walnutty. It's a bit like I wouldn't say it would be better in chocolate. Like it would be better, obviously in a gummy. It would be, if we could extract it and sell it that way, that would be the desirable way. But for now, you work within the compliance, and they sell quite well. People rarely do you hear complaints about the truffle, but they could be a bit dry. They could, they kind of, again, like think of it like a sort of a soggier walnut, but you're chewing them a little bit, but they're okay.
So then okay, so that now you're in Holland, and I think that you did a research study with somebody out of the UK on your data that you've collected of users in Holland. Have you found some good information there?
Yeah, that was a significant study, and it's a published one now. So we consensually ask our consumers if they would like to partake in our iMicrodose app and give us data on how they're using it, and what are they using it for? Is it their own trauma? Is it just recreationally? Is it for fun? Is it to help deal with certain issues they may be going through? Is it for pain management? Whatever it might be. And obviously it's adult use only. So you collect the information of males, females, different gender, different, not like nationalities, denominations, and we're learning about different weight even, and how does it impact an individual. And then we worked with the Drug UK Science, which is quite significant, Professor David Knight, who's world renowned when it comes to progressive thoughts amongst psychedelics and studies in psychedelics and advocacy for legal psychedelics. So, he's a really well-known guy, neuroscientist, brilliant man, far more brilliant than I'll ever be. And the science showed that, our data was significant in proving that this is working for people. And a lot of it's anecdotal research, which is, by the way, key research. It's almost like its own phase one. And that data has been analyzed and been saying like, wow, Red Light not only is being really careful about how they distribute their products to their end consumer, but also it helps us being self-regulatory. Like it actually helps us form backed data with, scientific evidence of why we can now go pitch to regulatory bodies on why this should or should not be legal. And for example, we use that data and pitched to the Oregon Senate when they were working on their regulations to include microdosing within their bill. And we were, as a company, very successful at presenting data that changed the way they wrote that final bill in Oregon. So, we consider that a huge win for the company. It adds a lot of credibility, validation, and we think it's quite significant. So, we're really proud, again, to think of a way to carefully influence, not influence and exploit, but carefully influence through data on how this should be hopefully come down the road for all countries and all states and all provinces.
Right. And who wants to use it and what they're using it for? I mean, to inform your formulations, future formulations.
Well, and the formulations candidly are pretty basic right now. It's not a lot of proprietary information right now because of its naturally occurring form. What is significant for us, and I'm probably now jumping ahead of a future question you'll have for me, is the fact that we have worked with labs on both sides of North American borders, from Canada to the US. So we've worked with a lab in Seacrest Laboratories in Montreal, and that laboratory has advanced our product with COAs. We've learned about the psilocybin content. We've again, back to that underground to mainstream towards the standardization of a pill form one day, and microdosing. Maybe it's a ground up or an extract, whatever it may be. We're learning about the standardization of our product. And we've also now worked with a lab in Irvine, California, that's FDA approved, DEA compliant, which is significant. There's a very, very few amount of these types of labs in America. And they're working on advancing our product too. And again, the end goal is, how do we commercialize this on a medical level? How do we hopefully be able to get our product from the Netherlands brought over, standardized, broken down, formulated, and then distributed hopefully to those with post-traumatic stress disorder, to named patient models, which we've seen in Brazil and they're talking about in Australia. So that's the overall target on how we see a path. But it's a slow path. And as again, 5 years being publicly traded, Pam, I think what's taxing on us as management and is that you take a business into really, no one would ever do this in the world. They would never start a business that they could only sell in about 1% of the world. They just wouldn't think that way. But if you want to be an outlier versus an outlaw and be the company that really can create a legacy, you do it slowly through sustainability, through hopeful, positive line revenues, and then eventually work with these regulatory bodies, with the data and with that self-regulatory measures that we put in place to start penetrating these emerging markets. But it takes a lot of time.
Right. But your approach also of, creating some sort of revenue like in Holland to just sustain the company while you're going through all these different, regulatory hurdles is probably the only way to do it. I mean, that's what I think is just so interesting about your company, the way you're coming at it from so many different directions to keep it afloat and then to move it forward. And so okay. In the global view, you can grow, cultivate in Amsterdam or in Holland, but can you do in Canada exactly?
So in Canada, we've only worked with the lab. We've got psilocybin import permits from Health Canada. We've had 4 or 5 of them to work on it, again, advancing the product.
Okay.
Distribution in Canada has been tougher than we imagined. We assume they have 2 different ways in Canada. They call it the Exemption 56 and the SPAL, which is the Special Access Program, or the whatever it is. And we would have liked to have thought that there would be many more applicants and many more receivers of those applications for magic mushrooms. And to Health Canada's credit, they have allowed those with terminal illnesses and things to use magic mushrooms, but we don't think the numbers are enough. I'm not going to sit there and outrage, because we have to do our very best to work with whatever administration, whatever government's in power in whatever country they're in, to say hey, let's try to fast forward this approach, because the science now, and it's bigger science than what we're even doing. I mean, there's big companies, Johns Hopkins, you name it, that are proving out the benefits of psilocybin, including a recent research study that's even showing it's great for longevity. They just did that with mice. So we're seeing all sorts of health benefits from back studies. And we do know now for sure, which is really great in America, is that they're looking in specific trials that, candidly, like we're not a part of these trials, but they're doing trials within psilocybin with naturally occurring psilocybin, not synthetics, to try to advance it. And I think the goal is to get it to veterans sooner rather than later. And now we're looking at this reclassification from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2, which will hopefully then get it to those people in need. Start with those who have severe trauma, and then that should filter its way down, because listen, everybody has their own trauma, and I think it's important for everybody to have the right to try.
Yeah, and I believe the VA was just cleared to be able to recommend that their doctors can recommend psilocybin treatment. So that's like been a new one. And then I just read today that the EU just announced a compassionate care program for psilocybin. So that's huge. That's the first step.
It's totally all these first steps are happening now. Germany's now talking about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mentioned Australia, New Zealand, Czech Republic just released the fact that they're writing a big new bill around it, and we're going to wait to see what the regulations are like there. So the key is, we as a company don't want to make the mistakes a lot of cannabis companies made, to be honest. And that was jump out of the gate, and I know it's 5 years, but I still look at us as a startup, and go and build the biggest facilities in the world, and then try to enter an oversaturated market. And then most of your money gets burnt through these facilities. And we saw a ton of cannabis companies run out of money. There's very few profitable cannabis companies to this day still, and they've been doing it now for 10, 15 years. So our approach has to be slow and cautious. For the investor in the company, that's sometimes tough. In the small cap world, they want instant results, instantaneous success, stock shooting up. And, I say this carefully. I would have thought the stock would have moved based on these forward-looking announcements that psilocybin is being much more accepted through these different regulatory bodies. But in the meantime, we're playing it slow. And, I don't want to necessarily use like a tortoise and a hare analogy, but sometimes the tortoise can get there if you wait out that sustainability and learn where to be. Back to that, we can only sell in 1% of the world. And right now it's slowly opening up, and you can kind of get it here, but it's not to the path of commercialization yet that we can go and invest and just go and buy our own lab. Because if we did that, you'd probably run out of money getting there, because you wouldn't have enough product to sell to people, even though you have this world-class place to make it. So every decision is very calculated and careful and slower. With that being said, Pam, I'm a very aggressive guy. I mean, I don't sleep a lot. I'm always thinking. We have a great management team around us, and we're looking for steps to be aggressive. But we will only pull the trigger when we really believe that commercialization process is there, like soon after and immediately. In the meantime, working on products and trying to standardize them and having like your line in the queue to hopefully be selected to use is still important. So we can't entirely ignore it altogether, because there are others, and big pharma type of companies and drug discovery companies with a lot of money who are probably looking at a piece of this pie too. So we are just doing it at our own pace, but the mission doesn't remain. The mission doesn't change; it remains, which is underground to mainstream. We want to get product into the hands of those people that need it. We need the regulatory bodies to help us get there. And in the meantime, we're doing our small baby steps to think that we'll be there once regulations change.
And I think one of the baby steps in normalizing psilocybin as a treatment is what you did with, or what you're doing with Happy Caps in Canada, and getting them into all the, I mean, they're in Costco, Loblaws, huge, major retail outlets, just to get everybody, used to mushrooms, even though they're the functional mushrooms for growing at home. I just thought that was kind of a really clever way, like you're saying, just where can we start poking and moving, so just on that, is that a big part of your business? I mean, revenue, the Happy Caps, and how are you just doing functional mushrooms, or is there, I know you just put a product out there, like what's the formulation, or are you just really keeping it really simple because it's really not your end goal,
Well, it's twofold. And again, another great question. Thanks for bringing up Happy Caps, happycaps.ca, happycapsusa.com. We started with the home grow kits, and the home grow kit is an interesting business. We sell,
I love it.
and we sell lion's mane, we sell shiitake, and we sell oyster. And I think, I got to be careful how I talk about these things, but I'm pretty sure in Canada, we probably sold more units of home grow kits than any other Canadian company. And that was a big part of that, a couple of Costco orders too. But they're in, many different, a plethora of stores. We have distribution points all over the country. And again, the theme of that is when they legalized cannabis in Canada, they allowed adults in their homes to have home grow use too. So you didn't just have to go to the Ontario cannabis stores. You didn't just have to go to your local dispensary. You could actually like grow it on your own if you got the right tools. And that was a legal thing now. And in the day, even if you were doing it, it wasn't considered legal. So our thought is if they ever legalize psilocybin, maybe they go along that same path. So now we just put in a different liquid mycelium into our substrate, and voila, you get to, that's a French word for you American listeners. And then and that's the goal is that one day you'd be able to grow at home your own psilocybin mushrooms as well. And whether it's cubensis or tamponensis or whatever the strain is. There's one with an interesting word and then envy right after it. But
Yes.
and this is a big goal. And back to Happy Caps too, we launched a functional mushroom gummy. And this wasn't just like launching a gummy without careful thought into it. It's a lion's mane shiitake blend. And we have what's called out of Canada an NPN number. And the NPN number is a Canadian, Health Canada approved national product health number that allows you to make claims on the benefits. And the claims in our case that we can make, where many are advertising you to the benefits of their products without actually having this NPN number or some sort of validation from whatever health agency is in your country, is the fact that they're proven for antioxidants and proven for immune boosting. So this is a really good functional mushroom gummy. We love the taste of it. It's sugar-free as well. It's vegan. We really put a lot of thought into it in R&D. And again, the thought is, one day, much like cannabis, like I said with the homegrown plant, well, there's cannabis gummies. We all know that. There's THC gummies, there's CBD gummies, there's a blend. So for us, one day will there be psilocybin gummies? That's the ultimate goal because that's a much easier way to consume it than chewing on a raw truffle or just fried mushrooms on your pizza when you're going to your buddy's college party. So so this is the goal. And so now we understand how to produce, how to distribute, how to brand, how to market, and how to sell. And the sales takes time in these things too. It doesn't just happen overnight. The home grow kit business was a steady climb over 2-3 years, and even then, you don't know where your next buyer comes from. And with the mushroom gummies, we're working on retail distribution. We're seeing a lot of that sort of that direct to consumer online approach is tough to navigate because marketing on things like Facebook or Instagram or Reddit or you name it are very costly for that cost per acquisition. So we love working with retailers to help sell. And we launched a little pilot project in Canada for those at what's called the Real Canadian Superstore, which is like one of Canada's largest retailers in terms of produce and you name it, from any product, any grocery store channel. And that the goal of that is to increase it from like one store to 20 to, that's where we're trying to get to, like we've done with the Costco's with Happy Caps homegrown kits.
Right. Yeah, I did hear about that. Okay, so how long has it been in the marketplace, the gummies?
The gummies we launched we did a soft launch and a pre-sale in June, and we're just really like getting a feel for them. Everything's about data, so we're learning like who's buying them off of Amazon, who's giving us good reviews, who can we approach, and this is the thing, when you have a CPG product, everyone just thinks you're going to sell $5 million in the first year. It takes a bit of time to get there. You got to learn your customers, you got to dedicate and narrow the focus on who you sell them to. In the meantime, though, we're getting great reviews, like people love them. Amazon, we're like 4.5 out of 5 stars, I believe, with like north of 35 reviews. We know some companies in Canada who do gummies who have been out on the market for 2-3 years and they have like 3 reviews. So like we're very pleased with sort of instant success in terms of learning about the product. And the sales channels we're just, we're hammering on calling up, picking up the phone, going, presenting, and we need, candidly, you need major retailers to help get these things into the tens of thousands of units, as opposed to just, a smaller number. So we continually work on opening up sales channels. The big focus, I think every company does that.
So is that something that's happening in Canada? Or are people very, like here, functional mushrooms are known. It's not like, if people see that, they know what it is now. Is that the same in Canada?
It is. What I would say is we're careful of where we're launching. And we always like to think of the first launches as guinea pigs to the next. So in the Netherlands, for example, we can only do it in the Netherlands, what we're doing. But in Canada, we started with the Happy Caps homegrown kits. And then we learned a little bit about them. And now, we were in Safeways just a couple of months ago in Oregon and Washington State. So you always look to bigger markets. So in the States, yes, people consume functional mushrooms. There's a couple of really big companies. A lot of them are private. So I sometimes wonder what their long-term success is. And the reason why I say that is because once you start searching functional mushrooms and supplements and mushrooms, your Instagram feed will pop up with every company that's spending the money to advertise to get the customer to buy them. And I'm noticing way less advertisements in the mushroom space. And to me, that's an indication that companies are probably running out of money. That the formula typically to get a customer for those who maybe aren't so entrepreneurial or don't really understand the process, it's a simple one. You spend money on marketing, you call it your cost, your CAC, they call it, the cost per acquisition of a customer. And then you acquire that customer, and then you hope that they become repeat customers to become a lifetime value customer. And that's a costly venture, though, to get even one customer. So that might, have an average of call it $150 in marketing dollars to get one customer. So one order, which is like between $30 and $40, you need them to have those at least 4 orders to make that, a attainable business model. And so when I'm seeing a lot of these companies not advertise, I'm thinking they didn't retain them. So our goal again is like, how do we get them slowly, and how do we make sure that our product is superior, which we believe it is, with the claims we're allowed to make, with the taste it is, non-stick. That's the big one for me. I ordered 30 other products from competitors. Basically, everyone's stuck, like the gummy in the package. And I don't want that. Like, I want to test it out in hot environments, cold environments. I want to leave it open on the counter for 2 days because you forget to seal it up. Like, these are the types of R&D that we like to do. And a lot of it's just anecdotal stuff. But we think our product's superior, and we believe over time, customers will start to realize that. But yes, it is still a popular category. That's my long-winded answer saying
yeah, great. Yeah. Just curious how that's going. So just back to Irvine Labs, I wasn't sure if we covered everything, but so are you basically partnering with them to, what I read was to validate potency testing, and what could be their medical applications? I guess, what is your relationship with Irvine Labs?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
We've imported one so far import of our truffles to them. And a lot of it was like, let's get it, let's dry it, let's work on the potency angle, let's learn about it, let's figure out its shelf life stability, because yes, you need to you absolutely need to have in a naturally occurring product some sort of measures that then you could go to the regulatory bodies. And it's always going to fluctuate a little bit. Like, none of these things are a perfect science. And you probably heard of the entourage effect in cannabis. And, there's all these different other little molecules within them. So we just keep learning about it through the lab. And the big one is shelf life stability, because eventually when you get product to people, you want to make sure that it lasts, and that it just doesn't sort of like filter off in terms of its potency. So these are all the small little tests we're doing now. And again, the goal is to ship more product and to work on product, eventually get it into a pill form or an extraction form, to be able to say, like, we have a naturally occurring standardized product that we can get into people's hands if the regulatory bodies allow us to.
And what's the shelf stability problem? Is it temperature or just aging?
Yeah, a lot of it can be, it's exactly that. Think of any live living culture you bring home from a grocery store, whether it's bananas or raspberries. Like, some bananas will last 2 weeks. You're not quite sure why. Some raspberries will get mold on them in 2 days, and it pisses you off. So it naturally occurring products, you got to absolutely, in the shipping process, it's got to be always kept within a certain cold environment. Once in a lab or a home, it's got to be kept in a fridge for sure. When it's sold out of a store, it's in a fridge. So you only have so much time. And then you learn about how long you can consume it for. And absolutely, you want to make sure that like anything, like if you were to buy an Advil or Tylenol, they have expiration dates, and that's usually because the potency dips off. It's not because they go bad entirely. But if you're microdosing for medical reasons and you have a certain amount of dosage that a doctor has prescribed to you, you want to make sure that dosage is at least in that pill for you to be able to have a consistency. And consistency is always the goal when it comes to drug discovery.
Right. And I know in the cannabis industry, something we're really discussing now is the cold chain supply that we don't have, but it's ruining our product at the end because we're not treating it like, where it has to be under 60 degrees to maintain, its stability and not to lose the potency and all the good stuff that's in there. So Um,
Yeah, and by the way, that's an expensive supply chain issue, right? Like in your margins, cold supply is way more costly on a logistics point of view. So all these little things are important. I know cannabis in the States right now is also difficult because it's not federally regulated. Although I keep hearing rumors, there's like some announcement coming any day now. Uh,
well, I
yeah,
hate to say it, but I really feel like it's going to happen.
yeah,
I don't know. I just do. Only because Trump is a money guy. He sees the potential. That's what, I think that's what we're all concluding. And whether, and also the legislators, I'm not sure who exactly, I've heard a couple of them say he's going to start with rescheduling and then start investigating or on the route to descheduling, which is what we really want. So it sounds like it's like, I'll take this baby step to go to reschedule, and then we planned the thing to go to deschedule. So that's why I feel like it's really in the works.
yeah, and back to the logistical supply chain stuff. The cannabis is tough in America because like you can't go state to state. Like it stops at certain states, on border states and stuff. So it's and again, I know CEOs of major cannabis companies. I love to pick the brain of people who brought their revenues to 300, 500 million. Like, how can one day Red Light Holland get to those kind of numbers? And it's not without its massive hurdles and headaches. And as you know, most of the companies unfortunately still lose a lot of money. They were lucky to be in an era where they raised copious amounts of money that we were probably just a year out of. So, but we did well for ourselves. But we're excited about what you said. Like, love or hate the admin in America. Um, beyond just being a money person, I think there is an absolute concentration, and more on the psilocybin side maybe than cannabis, but to help veterans. And we talked about that just briefly, Pam, when we started the interview. And we're seeing it with, Surgeon General Casey Means. We're seeing it with Secretary of Veteran Affairs Doug Collins. They're getting that review now to reclassify psilocybin from HHS, and that's been a big petition for years. So I do believe there's compassion and empathy there as well. I do want to say that. And on the other side, there will be a heck of a lot of job creation out of both industries. And in a time where jobs seem scarce and it appears to be like a difficult era. I don't know the financial sort of state of America as much as I do in Canada, but Canada is struggling right now. And we're seeing a lot of that lower to middle class, like really struggling. So we need more job creation too.
We do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's a problem here. You see it, it's starting to, you see it happening for sure, or it is happening. And then with Irvine Labs, are you beginning to think about like what health indications or specific health disorders that you want to treat with your formulations, or specific strains that you're going to put out in capsules? Is that a thought yet, or you're really just going through understanding the science of what you have?
So another great question. If the company had, more, we're still sitting with a significant amount of cash, and you can see that in our last report about a week ago on our Q1 2026 results. R&D is a tricky process because we want to concentrate on certain qualities where we think psilocybin can help. And by the way, one of them that's you're going to start to hear, whether it's our company or others in the future, is things like menopause. Our chief scientific officer, Sarah Hashkes, is really big on wanting to help females. And we get it, right? Like it's she showed us the study, she believes where it can work, but you need a significant amount of money for that. So, and by the way, that was some of the stuff we were learning in our data sample. So we believe there's a really big opportunity there, and something that we don't want to lose sight of, but we got to time it right. Like we got to time it. If you think of getting into a phase one, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that even costs. But these are goals. We think about it from weaning off people off of opioids, or people who beyond just trauma and veterans and first emergency responders, I would say is always a group that I think we need to be helping immediately. There's numbers vary from what I read and see, by the way, in terms of veteran suicides per week, but they're very high, and it's a terrible thing. So these are all the goals. But yes, to answer your question, we are looking at specifics, and I would say female menopause though is a big one that behind the scenes we're talking about a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's great. And do you have any like M&A or partnership? Like, what's that strategy like? Or are you thinking of other partnerships? I mean, Irvine Labs is pretty big.
Yeah, and on the R&D side, we have great partnerships because they're inexpensive partnerships. It's not like an acquisition. We always are looking at M&A and accretive revenue, to increase revenues. We're looking at either cash flow companies or companies that are near are cash flow positive, as opposed to companies burning a lot that just adding to our nut at the end of the day, which we don't want. And we're looking at really good brands. I really admire companies. There's companies that after 5, 10 years, they're still not making money, but they raised a bunch of money, but they put the legwork into at least creating a brand, and that's half the battle. And with good products and good Instagram accounts and stuff. So we're always thinking about that fit in the theme of mushrooms and psychedelics. So we are looking, I think in our last MD&A, we actually announced that we're in conversations with one company, to look to acquire. And the benefit of that is, you can hopefully bring in another company. They have X amount of clients too, that then you could sort of consolidate your own products like our home grow kits or our functional mushroom gummies. You could consolidate, some employees, like their accounting could get kind of like now washed up into our accounting department. So you save a little bit of money on their bottom line. So it's definitely a strategy of ours. But the hard part is, as I alluded to earlier, I think we looked at 40 different companies to acquire over the last 2 years, and everybody's balance sheet was losing money, every single one. So it's like, how do you turn that corner through an acquisition? So you could use stock because we're publicly traded to buy a company, but then you would have to give them working capital to help get them to a point of cash flow positive. And a lot of that is inventory concerns, because when you get big retail orders, a lot of time you can't fulfill them, and then they delist you. Inventory is a big part of it. I don't mean to give you a whole sort of
No, I love to hear this. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Oh, the lesson in the quick lesson in business is, if you get a Costco, think about the amount of inventory you need to have to prepare for the Costco. So if you don't have a lot of cash flows, you can't actually get it set up. And by the way, there's always a risk to cancel the order and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So to have an inventory is really key to get the big orders from these major retailers. And then, by the way, there's 90-day paying cycles usually. So you got to be able to sustain yourself through those windows until you receive your payment back. So there's a whole other art form than just getting out a product, selling it, and making money. And in a slowing economy with less disposable income, these are the things that we're always cautious of too. So you got to put your price point at a fair price. You got to absolutely overwhelm the competition with a superior product, and then you got to hopefully brand it and get to the retailer. So, but that's all the goal here. So yes, we're looking at good companies at M&A that might be able to get us over that hump of bringing in more revenue, but then getting them to a cash flow positive situation.
Have you heard about the company in Oregon that just launched the first psilocybin edibles called Horizon?
So we've heard a little bit about these companies, and we admire these companies.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's difficult being publicly traded and being a Canadian company is the Oregon laws are written to the point where you need to have an Oregonian resident be the primary shareholder, so a controlling interest in the company. So it's tough because when you're a publicly traded company, if you're a minority partner, you can't report on the revenue. And as we know, Q1, Q2, Q3, everyone wants to look at the revenue. But if we just say we have a private investment in X company and you can't really see what it's going to do or what the value or liquidity of it will be. So it makes so again, even though we were influential in helping the Senate write those laws, it's tough for us to actually have presence in Oregon right now. But we're always thinking of ways that we can perhaps have. But yes, I've heard slightly of that company. I've heard of some of the facilitator approaches in that state. And most importantly, we love to see the industry evolve. Like as competitive as I need to be, we want everyone to do well, because that, as all rising tides, what do they call it? Or all tides rise, shit, whatever it is, that expression.
Rising, all boats lift and rising tides or something.
Like, yeah. So, hopefully all companies do as well.
Yeah. I guess so. To end, I guess what is the big ultimate goal? Is it to have a cultivation facility, CPG product, worldwide distribution? You're really one of the first trailblazing in this space, I think.
Yeah, early on, we were focused on many different things, and that has its challenges. There's personnel challenges. There's if you think of a company with portfolio companies like an ETF, like you could have some that do well, but that's some that don't do well, and then another quarter some do well, and then the ones you thought were trending up aren't. So we're really trying to take our 5 years of learning, and with our board of directors and with our strong management team, is super narrowing a focus. And what I would like to say is the narrowed focus at this point for sure is we are a CPG company at the end of the day where psychedelics could be involved within those products. And again, back to the home grow kits, back to the gummies. Are there other, potential companies that we look at that buy that psilocybin can be in one day? So I think that's a much more narrowed focus of us. We pride ourselves on branding. We think we've gotten, great retail distribution out there as well. And to a point where we've done farming, we've disclosed how we were going to build a bigger farm, but we're now looking to kind of sell that venture, before it's built because it's got its own difficulties. So I think the focus has become narrowed to like we're still a psilocybin company at the end of the day who wants to help on a mental health crisis that's going on in the world. We want to have products that can help get in those people's hands to help them.
Right. I guess also I'm thinking, so basically you would rather just focus on the CPG instead of being vertically integrated, which would have bigger profit margins, I would think, right? Is that right? I mean, in the psilocybin world, I don't know, but here.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we still have a mushroom farm in New Brunswick that's producing shiitake mushrooms. We still have a truffle farm in Horst in the Netherlands that's producing these psilocybin truffles. So we are still farming. I just think farming on a mass scale might not be the end goal. I think, growing products that could be distributed would be, I think, more of this narrowed focus for us now.
Right. And then you can reach so many people globally. Just think that's where the numbers are if you're talking about numbers and,
Yeah, listen, the psilocybin market is proven to be in the billions. If you think of like any like where cannabis is and where, any sort of new drug discovery, and by the way, it already is in the billions. Like consumer demand has proven that everybody wants magic mushrooms. In Canada, you can order it through Canada Post, our public, national mail service. You can get it at shops that pop up illegally all over the country, and very little of them are getting busted. I know in America, I know many people are always telling me, my God, if it wasn't for you, I would have never thought to try the product, even though I know the product's is still illegal where I'm buying it. And they're saying, thank you, though, because while I don't know what's in the product, and I agree that it should be standardized and regulated, it is helping me in microdosing specifically. Those anecdotal stories, we do Q&As every year and sometimes twice a year. The amount of investors that just invest in Red Light Holland because they are passionate about the product, because how it's helped them, how it's helped their sister, how it's even helped their mother. We hear these stories and they want us to fight the fight on behalf of the people to be able to get there. And compliance is difficult. We've been debanked as a company, which led us towards a Bitcoin path. We've been working with regulatory bodies. We actually helped try to shape regulations even in a Caribbean island when we first started called St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but then they had to change the power. So while we were just about to get there, it didn't work out because, the new governments coming in didn't want this modern medicinal industry. So we're always working on this compliance and regulatory stuff. And to be honest, beyond growing the business, that's a lot of the stress. I mean, a lot of the stress. And I'm putting it out there. If anyone knows RFK Jr., that's my next target. That's fine. And it is on my, I've had a vision board my whole life, and I've literally achieved everything on the vision board up into what my wife looks like and the names of my kids and all these things, right? I've done that. And this is my focus now. Call it corny, call it the psychedelics may be talking. We're going to get to them. And I think I'd have a great conversation with them. So that's really my goal.
Saw that he's made a comment, tweeted today that he to some representative in Colorado saying, I'm watching what you're doing, that you're, progressing this. Basically, I'm watching you. I'm here. I'm watching you.
That's great. And I do have someone on the inside who knows him. And it's anecdotal, so I can't say this is proven words, but he wants to help veterans. He gets it. The mental health crisis can't be denied. And if we just wait for big pharma and drug discovery, by the time that gets into its phase 3s and gets approved and goes through all its, academia channels, which God bless them, it's great too, right? We want we want the new form of the SSRI to help people too. But by the way, if we can help sooner with the naturally occurring stuff, that we don't have to, go through all those like channels to get it there. Why would we question that? And like cannabis, there's some like, GW Pharma who have FDA approved drugs out of cannabis, and then there's some that just sell it recreationally. But if cannabis is working for people, psilocybin should be approached the same way. And we believe it'll get there.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. I guess that's it, unless I've missed anything that you want to add.
No, I think it's great. Like, I like doing these. I sometimes feel a little bit repetitive, but it's always nice, Pam, because obviously you have newer audiences that haven't seen or heard of our company. And I'm so grateful for the reach out. And the one thing I'd like to end these interviews on is, everyone is struggling. And I know fundamentals in a company matter. You have to look at the fundamentals. You have to believe in the growth. You have to believe in the growth channels, the management team, and obviously a lot of that's forward looking and where the industry will be. But it's really beautiful to learn again from investors and for those who are reaching out to the company, seeing the fact that, the way Elon Musk had a whole EV mission, right? And it took them basically decades to get there to where they're at today. So I always say, like, if you have any questions for the company because you're curious about the helpful nature of psychedelics, psilocybin specifically for those individuals, like, reach out. Like, we make a lot of time to talk to people, and we do those Q&As, like I said. So if you're curious, you can read through old press releases. You can feel our mandate about personal sovereignty, and again, that right for us to try, for us to crave that mental and financial freedom. It's a new world right now. It's a world that a lot of people don't have trust in the governments. With that being said, like I said before, we need to work with our governments, but optionality is key. And I really hope that our governments allow us to have optionality to take care of ourselves. And I also, implore, people watching here to read more, educate more. Don't just go buy product because your buddy said so. Make sure you have proper set and setting. I can, still illegal, so I can never encourage you to buy this stuff unless you're in the Netherlands. But read about it, educate yourself. And if you've got any questions, please reach out. We'll find a way to get in touch with you.